You say in your book that many American preachers get Romans 13 wrong, and you talk about the church's proper biblical relationship to government. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think Romans 13, among Orthodox, legitimate evangelical Christianity, Romans 13, I think, is probably the most. There's probably more malpractice in the preaching of Romans 13 than any other chapter in the Bible. Most of your preachers read Romans 13 as a command of unconditional submission of the Christian citizen to the civil authorities. That is not what Romans 13 says, and they'll use it in conjunction. Romans 13 is the passage about being subject to the higher powers. There's no power but of God, and so forth. And that is mixed with the passage in Mark where Jesus says, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's." And that is misread as basically a command of unconditional submission to civil authorities. If Caesar has spoken, God has spoken. I argue in the book, the Caesar and idols portion, that we've basically made an idol out of the state. We've exalted Caesar to a level equal to God. If Caesar has spoken, God has spoken. That is not what Jesus is saying in the passage about rendering unto Caesar, and it is not what Paul is saying in Romans 13. If you look carefully at Romans 13, Paul is a logical thinker. Paul is a great thinker as well as a great theologian. But when for those of you logic students will recognize the logical syllogism in Paul's statement. When Paul says, there's no power but of God, the powers that be are ordained of God, and they are ordained for the punishment of wickedness and for the praise of those who do well. And then Paul says, for this cause, we are subject to the civil rulers for conscience sake, and for this cause we pay taxes. Well, what is this cause? It's a classic if-then syllogism. Because government is exercising power delegated from God, therefore Christians are obligated to submit to it. The unspoken part is if government is no longer exercising power delegated from God, if government is claiming to be God, if government is demanding of Christians things that God forbids or forbidding things that God commands, Caesar has exalted himself above God, and at that point both Paul and Jesus are telling us we are not to render submission to Caesar, we are to obey God. And instead, Romans 13 is a challenge to civil authorities who go beyond their God-given jurisdiction and try to seize the role of God. And it's a command that we are not to submit when government seizes that role of trying to play God in the lives of its citizens.